In this phase of adulthood, I want to talk about discipline and structure. The child accepts the structure given to it unconditionally. The racism, the chauvinism, the unfairness, the cruelty, every imperfection in every structure that has ever been is given unconditionally. All of the beauty, all of the flaws. And the child and the grown-up in a childlike state accepts the structure without any filter. We then go through the adolescent phase of critiquing and rebelling and rejecting the structure that was given to us. We reject the flaws of our parents as we become an adult within the culture. We reject the flaws within our culture as we become an adult in the world. We reject the flaws of our religion as we become an adult in the spiritual world. Right? And we're now in a dissociated state, a disconnected state. It's as if we've put in the clutch, third gear is no longer engaged, and we will either coast down into a frozen standstill, or we will create a fourth or a fifth gear and then re-engage with discipline and structure of our own making. The purpose of the adult is the final cycle in the evolutionary process that has been from the moment of the Big Bang, from the moment of creation, until the end of time, a process of bifurcation, complexity, distinction, refining, and reassembly into a more elegant form, into a shape that is more beautiful, more true, more good than the shapes that we were given. Right? Meaning, if nothing ever improved, then life would be at a standstill. If the first moment of the Big Bang had never gotten bigger, more interesting, more dynamic, then the entire universe would have stayed this big. Just a few potentiated forms. But life, and all that serves in the process of life, is the process of receiving the download, rejecting the imperfections, and then creating and iterating something better. And so the stage from the innocence of the child to the offering of the gift, the bridge is adolescence, is criticism, rebellion, rejection, and observation of what's wrong, so that we can be participants in the creation of what's right. And it's not that the adolescent can be a participant unless invited, right? Because the adolescent's job is to notice and reject, right? From a place of objective criticism, noticing and rebelling, we cannot engage. But something can be born in the synergy between the child, the young adult, the adolescent, that does engage, that does come back, that does complete the circle and offer the next stage of evolution. Now, the important part of this is discipline and work. Now, here's what I mean. USB, the standard USB that has been operational over the last 20 years or so, is a terrific protocol, right? It allows mice and external hard drives and printers to connect with a computer and print and download files and power speakers, and it's an interface, it's a technology. And it's also a little bit irritating. There's a couple of irritations you'll have noticed with the original USB. The first thing is every time you put one of them, you take the female and the male side and you try to connect them together, about half the time you get it wrong, right? You put it in, it doesn't fit, so then you flip it and then it fits, and sometimes you have to try around, and get it in. It's also big. It's a little bit clunky, and for some time it was not terribly complex. Like you wouldn't power your laptop through a traditional USB. And this has been irritating, millions and millions of people for 20 years. And that's the adolescent noticing this isn't working. Why did they have to design it this way? But then someone came along and developed USB-C. So there was USB-A, USB-B. This was USB-C, a new interface. And it had remarkable benefits. Number one, it was smaller. Good for the environment, good for packing, good for manufacturing, good for cost. It was smaller than the USB before. So substantially, right? It was less than half the size, so 50% savings in material, in space, in cost. That's big, a 50% gain. The next thing is the USB-C device can go in regardless of which way you put it in. So you can't put a USB-C into a USB-C port and get it wrong. So all of those fiddling around trying to get it right, solved. Right? Finally, you could power a laptop. You could run a mouse. You could run a projector. There's so many things. What you could do with a USB-C port expanded dramatically. So the cost and the volume and the complexity for the user goes down, and the possibility field goes up. It's a fabulous technology. It's better. And millions of people could imagine something way better than the original USB. But you see, complaining and imagining is not enough. Somebody had to not only design the technology, not only show how it worked, but convince companies to switch to the new technology. Because if just one person used USB-C, it would fail. Because nobody can make money designing mice and designing power ports and all of that for one person. So it takes a tremendous shift to get the entire group. It takes a lot of work, a lot of discipline. So one person might have to work on that project for 10 years. 8 hours, 10 hours a day, showing how it's cheaper, showing how it's better, solving everyone's problems. And only then, a small group of committed people working for a decade, only then does the entire planet see a huge increase in efficiency and possibility. So that's the role of an adult, right? To not only reject what is, to not only redesign it better, but to do the disciplined work, the cost analysis, finding the suppliers, getting their boss to think about it, raising the money, convincing a major computer company to start with a better technology. And so that's what it takes to make the world a better place. The adult is the face of discipline, the face of hard work, the face of vision. The adult is the one that takes the irritation and the criticism of the adolescent and turns it into 5 years of hard work to make a better world. A better world, I might add, that the next wave of adolescents will criticize, because that's how life works. Life is not about arriving. USB-C is not the solution. It's the best technology of today. Right? And as we speak, as I'm admiring the beauty, the efficiency, the flexibility of the USB-C protocol, there are countless people working away, aware of its flaws, aware of its software bugs, dreaming of something better, perhaps wireless, dreaming of something better, more efficient, more cost-effective, more versatile. Right? And that's how life moves forward. The adult is ultimately in service to evolution. And by being in service, by willingly, right, the adolescent rejects the status quo, rejects the world, rejects all of the stupidity around it. The adult says, nothing changes until we do. Nothing grows unless I grow it. Why don't I pick something that's really sick, that really bothers me, that I have a chance to do something about, and spend the next 10 years of my life making the world a substantially better place, so that the next wave of adolescents can come along and talk about how stupid it is, and how clumsy, and why didn't they think of this, and why do we have to do that, and why does it take so long, why do you have to physically plug in a port, why doesn't the computer read my mind? Right? So that the next wave of adolescents can whine and complain bitterly. And then some of them turn into adults. Not all of them. Some will whine and complain for the rest of their lives. But some of them become adults. And actually, a small percentage of constructive adults is responsible for 95% of all of the evolution that we see on this planet today as a species. Perhaps 2% of the human population throughout time has precipitated, has led, has generated more than 90% of all of the significant changes in technology in human history. And we're right on the verge of discovering something profound. We have changed the computer landscape. We have made the world digital. We have created jets and rockets. We've created nanocomputers. We have created the biggest explosion of technology the planet has ever seen on the outside. And here's an interesting awareness. 90% of all human behavior in the history of the species, in the history of the planet, for hundreds of millions of years, is cult dictate, is default mode programming. 90% of what you, your neighbors, and everyone around the world is doing is being done with no other basis other than the thought, the instinct, that this is the way things are done. It's called the default mode network in the brain. We do it because we do it, and we do it because they did it, and they did it because they did it, and that's why we do it. It's called circular thinking. It has minimal scientific reference. You could say that 95% of everything happening on the planet today is being done because it was done that way before, and that any AI, any well-reasoned thinker, any traveler could show you a way to do it 10 times better with less energy than the way it's being done. But it's being done the way it's done because that's the way it's done. Now, this is hardly scientific. This is hardly innovative. It's minimally intelligent. We do it because we did it, and we did it because that's the way it was done, and so that's why we do it. Pick any subject. What are the key subjects to learn in school, and what are you actually learning? How best to teach someone how to drive, and how are you learning how to drive? How best to know how to think, and how are you learning how to think? How best to have a relationship, and how are you having a relationship? How best to find a compatible partner, and how are you finding a compatible partner? How best to prevent sickness and disease, and how are we preventing sickness and disease? Every single fucking area of the entire fabric of our cult is incredibly inefficient. We spend vast amounts of time, money, and natural resources to bumble along with minimal thought and huge protectionist factions. Oh, we can't get rid of stupid teachers because the unions might be upset, right? We can't vote for people who tell us the truth because we don't want to hear it. We can't possibly go to school and learn to be parents because nobody does that. And so we have generations of highly inept parents, right? So it doesn't matter where. Nobody's designing culture. Nobody's studying how to design culture. Because the core ingredient of a culture is a cult and a group of people willing to adhere to it. And so no cult, no culture ever teaches how to evaluate, upgrade, and iterate the cult. Meaning, the core definition of a cult is that nobody questions it. This is what we eat in this cult. Doesn't matter if it makes us sick. Doesn't matter if it's killing us. This is what we eat. This is what we do in this cult. Doesn't matter if it's boring. Doesn't matter if we're depressed. It's what we do, and we're sticking to it. Because that's what cult members do. Cultural evolution, cultural design, is the biggest frontier, the biggest unexplored resource on the planet today. 95% of all human behavior is primarily dictated by the cult, and the cult code, the core architecture, the hierarchy of values, is the one thing that no one's thinking about, the one thing that no one is designing. You can go on Amazon and find 1,000 books on how to cook food, but not one good book on how to cook a culture. I'm Dane Rose, and it's been a pleasure exploring these ideas.